All right, welcome back to it. Hour number 2 here of a big Thursday. Glad you're here for the program. I got a lot to cover here today for the Foxhole of Freedom, coming to you live one last time this morning from Washington, D.C. It's been a fascinating trip. I'll tell you more about that. 3 big things to tell you this hour. Number 1, another court win for President Trump as the U.S. District Judge tosses a lawsuit claiming the administration has created a lack of independence for the FEC. We'll talk about that. Number 2, Donald Trump says that Vladimir Putin tells him he's going to respond. I don't think we had to be told about that. He's going to respond because of the attacks by Ukraine and their drones that destroyed, what was it, 40 Russian jets? 40 Russian jets, right? So that's happening. And number 3, I've got it spread out here. I mean, it's one article after another, and it all comes back to the Chinese Communist Party. And why does it have such an attraction for the state of Michigan? Why does it have such an attraction for the University of Michigan? I mean, you go back to these 5 students that were caught at Camp Grayling photographing when Taiwan was in there doing military exercises, and they claimed to be journalists. They were quickly found out not journalists. Some have now fled the country. And then, of course, there's this plot to bring in this agro-terrorism. And the people doing the very best job covering this, Michigan News Source. It's one article after another. I mean, complete team coverage. It's excellent, front to back, MichiganNewsSource.com. You can go look at it. Of course, it's their state. It's right in their backyard. On May 31, the New York Times published a story questioning President Donald Trump's strategy of aggressively targeting suspected Chinese national students as spies. Bill Kristol, moron, also questioning it. Neocon Bill Kristol, a guy who loves war, doesn't want us to pick on the poor Chinese Communist Party. But the New York Times said aggressively targeting suspected Chinese national students as spies, saying that experts fear it will do more harm than good for American research. Yeah, okay. We can do our own research, all right? Just 3 days after that article was published, the U.S. Attorney's Office, Eastern District of Michigan, announced that 2 Chinese nationals had been arrested and charged with smuggling a dangerous biological pathogen into this country. A fungus that impacts corn, wheat, rice, and barley. Now, currently there are fungicides that can control this for the most part. The fungus causes a disease called head blight, a disease of wheat, barley, corn, and rice, causing significant health issues also in humans and livestock. It's responsible for billions of dollars in economic losses worldwide every year already. So says FBI Director Kash Patel. He's right. We had Farmer Mark Benjamin on this program yesterday saying, look, right now we can control it for the most part. He says it's on his farm right now, this disease, head blight. But he said if they had the intention of making it resistant to fungicides, they could do incredible damage to the food supply. They could cut yields by half, maybe more. Think about that. If your corn, wheat, rice, and barley was cut in half, what would that mean? If it wasn't just in the United States, what if it was also in Canada, in Mexico, India? What if it got loose in China? And half your food supply, half your grain crops were wiped out. It would mean global famine. Quite simply, it would mean global famine. Mark Benjamin told us yesterday that we're only ever 2 seasons 2 harvest seasons away from a famine issue already. If we had 2 bad harvests in a row globally, places like Argentina, Sub-Saharan Africa, India, Asia, the United States, Canada, if we had 2 bad seasons in a row, we would already be teetering on a global famine. And so when you see these terrorists come in, and these are terrorists, I don't care what you call it, these are terrorists. If you come in smuggling a fungus that you're going to do research on at the University of Michigan, you are a terrorist. And they are suspected Chinese bioterrorists bringing this dangerous agent into the United States, hiding it in their boots in one of the places. I mean, obviously, they weren't trying to be upfront about it. And of course, this story has caught the attention of Just the News, Fox News, all the major networks. And so, because, come on. Because this is a very dangerous thing. That's why it's caught everybody's attention. Just put it in your shoes. I stuffed them in the shoes, said Jean. Fusarium graminearum creates head blight. This is from the Fox News story. Jean had been attempting to smuggle the pathogen into the United States since she began posting doctoral studies funded by China in 2022. Been trying to do this for 3 years. Also accuses Jean of asking a third party to send her fusarium in January 24. Usually no problems. She sent a message to a third person. Rest assured, I have mailed these before. The third person shipping the package hid the samples in a statistics textbook. It was also intercepted. Jean also accused of lying on a student visa. This is why we have to take a much closer look at how we're dealing with students coming in from foreign countries, how we're dealing with it, and what we're prepared to do to protect ourselves against it. All right. Want to get to all that. I also want to share one other story this hour with you, and that is from Karine Jean-Pierre. Yeah, she is no longer a Democrat, the former press secretary for Joe Biden, the one that stood up there for, 2 years, 8 months, and several days saying how wonderful he was. What a great and athletic and just mentally sharp as a tack individual he was. Yeah. Here, I want you to hear this part. Bite number 9. Let's just go to bite number 9 real quick. Roll it.
And here's the truth, and here's how I will lay it out to you. I think we need to stop thinking in boxes and think outside of our boxes and not be so partisan. And the way that I see moving forward in this space that we're in right now is if you are willing to stand side by side with me, regardless of your how you identify politically, and as long as you respect the community that I belong to and vulnerable communities that I respect, I will be there with you. I will move forward with you. And that is, I think, so important.
Blah,
so
blah,
this
blah,
book, Independent,
blah, blah. Word salad. What is it? I'm no longer a Democrat. I'm an independent, and I've got a book to sell called Independent. That's what this is about. I'll be right back.
Hi, it's Steve Gruber for Freedom Concrete Coating.
Good to have you back on the program. We're going to switch gears now. We're going to the border, as we should. Again, there were two things that got Donald Trump elected: the economy and the border. Those were the two biggest things. There were some other items as well that drove people to the polls, not the least of which is that Democrats don't seem to stand for anything except they hate Donald Trump. Other than that, what have they got? I'm not really sure. All right, joining me now is Eamon Blair, senior fellow at the Texas Policy Institute. Glad to have you here, Eamon. You're specializing in border security, immigration policy. You have experience down there, and you say, sir, the National Guard is the backbone of border security. I mean, a lot of Democrats are complaining that the National Guard is on the border. You say it's critical, it's imperative. Good morning. What do you say?
Good morning. Yeah, thank you. As we can see, really, since DHS was created, they never have had the ability or capability to actually secure the border. The Mexican cartels have gained operational control of the border from ever since really the early 90s. And DHS has been trying to play catch up. And so really, this is the only time that we've seen operational control of the border since 1916. And that was when the National Guard was placed on the border to counter Pancho Villa. The cartels are they have outmanned, outgunned, outfunded, and outmaneuvered DHS and our law enforcement. This is far surpassed what law enforcement can handle, and so really the National Guard is or the active component Army or Marines are going to be the only way that we can actually secure the border.
As I look at this, I look at numbers that are remarkable already. So if 77.5 million Americans voted for the border to be secure, they got what they paid for. That's for sure. Border crossings down 90, 95, some places 99% or more. In fact, so bad for those coming across the border that certain places have been closed. An intake center in San Diego closed, for example, just here a few weeks ago, something I noticed. It's working, isn't it?
Yes, sir. 100%, especially from California to El Paso. That's really where the Department of Defense has been able to actually take control over the portion of the international border. However, here in Texas, we're having a little bit of a more difficult time. And that is because 95% of our border is actually private property. So trying to counter the cartels and their smuggling operations between the ports of entry is a lot more difficult here. And that's why it actually takes... go ahead.
Are those private property owners not interested in having people there? Are they resistant to it? Are some open to it, some not? What's the challenge?
Well, the challenge is, imagine you were in Afghanistan and you were living in Afghanistan and you had the option to either secure your family against the Taliban or to work with U.S. partners. For the last few decades, we have not been able to protect the families at our border from the Mexican cartels. Mexico is not the Colombia of the 80s and 90s where we were dealing with Pablo Escobar. We are dealing with a rich Afghanistan. And so when you realize that fact, you realize the threats that they face, not being able to protect our citizens, they have a choice. They can either side with the Mexican cartels, they can actually or work with the cartels or side with U.S. forces. And so you're caught in a situation, the landowners down there, on whether they're going to allow illicit trafficking on their property and remain safe and secure, not kidnapped or killed, or they can work hand in hand with the Border Patrol agents and then the Department of Defense.
So here's my question. When Donald Trump declared these cartels terrorist organizations, has that helped? What kind of toolbox does that open, and are we using it?
Good question. Yeah, so that actually opens up all of our intelligence capabilities. So the intelligence community working with the Mexican cartels and against the cartels actually, and understanding how they operate south of the border. We've seen a complete decrease in fentanyl. However, what we're seeing is an actual increase in the trafficking of oil. It's gone up like 3 times. And that's why recently in our state legislature and here in Texas, we actually had to create a new task force, an oil task force to combat this threat. In fact, today, Governor Abbott is signing those bills into law. And so we're seeing the cartel shift. Look, when you only measure certain variables like illegal aliens across the border or fentanyl, then all of the cartels have to do is go to a different commodity that is not being measured, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it is. It's a long process to clean up the damage that was done to our border. You say all the way back to 1916, more than a century in the making of a porous border. I mean, I remember Ronald Reagan giving amnesty and thinking, well, this will get us on the right track. It never did. And I'm also focused on the fact that Joe Biden and the auto pen opened up the border in ways that probably never should have happened. I really greatly appreciate you being here, sir. Thank you. Obviously, we'll be coming back to you, Eamon, because we need to keep an update. And I'm glad the governor of Texas is doing the right thing today, sir. Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you, sir, for having me.
Really appreciate it. There you go. Look, these are the two things: the economy and the border. They're getting there on the border. At the Wellness Company, we believe your health is our greatest asset. From natural supplements to comprehensive medical consultations, they offer doctor-developed solutions. I work with the Wellness Company all the time. And right now, the hottest thing going is this parasite cleanse, ivermectin and mebendazole. I've been on it, I don't know, 15 days. It's a 21-day cycle. I think I'm on day 15, 16. Ivy could tell me. I'm not really sure. But it is a way to clean everything up. If you're feeling tired, if you're feeling run down, you got brain fog, you're like you've tried everything. If you try a parasite cleanse, 60 million Americans have parasites that are problematic. You eating raw fish? Do you have animals in the house? Parasites come with that. You can find out more at twc.health/Gruber, twc.health/Gruber. The parasite cleanse, I'm on it. Ivy's on it. It's working for me. It can work for you. Back in just a moment here on the Steve Gruber Show. All right. Having a little bit of fun here this morning. You know, I've had a great time in D.C. You know what I found to be the most fun? We talk about a lot of serious things. This is not serious. These little mint electric scooters are big fun. And look, I use Uber, of course, but Uber can get you these scooters. They can also get you the bicycles. It is great fun. Yesterday the weather was great. It was 80 degrees. So I get out of the White House. I was there for there was this summer soiree on the South Lawn. It was great fun. Thousands of people in there. The president came out and gave some remarks. Very enthusiastic. It was good fun. I stood next to Howard Lutnick there, and Bobby, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. came over and shook my hands, said hi to me, recognized me from, the interviews we did with him last year. Hope to have him on again soon. But so I leave the White House, having had a great time, and get on one of these mint scooters and have a great time. It's like you got your suit and tie on, you've got your satchel over your shoulder, and you're just zipping along at, 20 miles an hour, whatever they go. And it's fun. And you're getting there faster than walking. but you're also seeing the city. And Washington is a lot better in most places than you'd be led to believe. It's got some great stuff. The museums are great. The points of interest are great. And being able to see it, and lots of great little bars and restaurants and eateries and points of interest. It's a fun city. It has been, and I'm glad I'm going to be here more. In fact, I've marked a couple of restaurants on the to-do list. So when Ivy comes out with me next time, we've got some things to do. As far as that goes, so I'm kind of excited about that. Anyhow, so yeah, Uber the little mint scooter, away you go. Good stuff. All right. We're going to take a break and come back. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Make sure you follow me on X and Instagram, Truth Social, live on YouTube, live on X every day, live everywhere across the universe. It's the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back. Going another direction, as we do time after time after time. We just go to different places in the conversation. So much to talk about, as you know, as I'm here in the nation's capital, very busy place. And of course, with the 78, soon to be 79-year-old president running like he's 25 years old, we just try to keep up. My next guest, the Honorable Gregory Slayton, author of the critically acclaimed Portraits of Ukraine, A Nation at War. He served as the U.S. ambassador to Bermuda under Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama. I want to be the ambassador to Bermuda, I think. How do I apply for that? Anyhow, he's here to talk about President Xi. And we've been talking about this for the last few weeks with different folks. Gregory, thank you for being here.
Great to see you, Steve. Always good to be on your show.
Always good to have you. Look, there's a rumor, and we've been talking about this for weeks because it's our understanding that maybe President Xi had a stroke about a year ago. We can't confirm that, but there was a reshuffling of the power structure. Now, Xi, over many years, eliminated all of his competition. We saw him get dragged out right in the middle of the big Chinese Communist Party gathering, right? He came and got the one guy, and they let him right out of there in front of everybody, basically saying, "Don't screw with us." But rumor is, over the last year, Xi has lost his grip on power, and his exit, according to some, is imminent. What do you believe?
Well, of course, China is, as Winston Churchill said about the Soviet Union, a mystery wrapped in an enigma surrounded by a question. So nobody
Yeah.
really knows because that's one of the problems of communism. You know, in a democracy, you have elections, they can be messy and stuff, but at least you have some understanding what's going on. Here you have no understanding, but there certainly are many, many indications that she has lost power. And my sources tell me it's highly likely that in the next 60 days, he will either go into a ceremonial position or he will retire entirely and be replaced by, I've got a couple of names that are front runners right now, but I
Well,
don't
let's
think
have
it's
him
been
because here's the
decided.
thing. I talked to people like Gordon G. Chang. He's a pretty good
Sure.
expert. I talk to Gordon
Absolutely. I love
oftentimes.
Gordon.
I
Love
talk to
Gordon.
my friends over at the Epoch Times.
Hmm.
Nobody has a name. If you have a name, Gregory, you're a little bit ahead of
I
the
do.
folks that I talk to all the time. Let's have them.
Well, I do have a name, but again, I'm not sure. I'm not saying I'm sure,
Of
but the
course you're
name
not. I
I
mean,
keep
it's
hearing
speculation.
is, yes, is Yang Wang. Yang Wang he's 2 years younger than she. He is a reformer. He was sidelined 2 years ago, but he is a favorite of the reform, the folks that have basically taken power now because she's
All right, so hold
10
on.
years have been a disaster.
Here's what
Yeah.
we've got to sort out. This is really
Yes, sir.
important. You
Yes,
know,
sir.
Chairman Mao might have been called a reformer by some. Of course, he killed 50 million of his own people in the Great Leap Forward, which is a leap into, they don't even teach that in school anymore. The Great Leap Forward should be taught in every school. It should be mandatory education of how he murdered millions of his own people, but that's for a different day. Yan
Correct.
Wang, when you say reformer, what do you mean?
I mean, pro free markets, pro democracy, pro
Wow.
strong correction to the right. Now, don't get me wrong, not in the American mold, but in the Chinese mold, what that means is someone much more like Deng Xiaoping. Deng Xiaoping was in my humble opinion, the best. He made a lot of mistakes. The one child policy was under him, and that's been a disaster for China. But Deng Xiaoping was a reformer. He did lead to stronger relations with the West. And that's clearly what China needs. China is in a world of hurt. Their economy is in free fall. Population demographic disaster is ongoing for the next 20 years. It's super bad. And they need someone who can help lead them out of this pit
Yeah,
that Xi Jinping has gotten them into.
when they say their gross domestic products is increasing 5 and 6%, that's simply not true. We
Totally,
know
totally
that.
untrue.
We,
Totally
we
untrue.
know that from people that I know that are in China that look at the factories and say, look, the factories, some of them are running at 20 and 30% capacity. They can see with their own eyes. When
Right.
Donald Trump's tariffs were put in place, it really kneecapped Chinese industry. They can say what they want, and Donald Trump's critics can say what they want. But he has inflicted tremendous pressure on Xi, and that might be what ends up ushering him out the door. So, do you think if you get a reformer, would that bring us back from the brink? Look, you've got these efforts underway in China with new aircraft carriers, heavy bombers that can release 1,000 drones. I saw this technology not long before I saw what Ukraine was able to do with drones to the Russian Air Force.
Right.
These are all sophisticated weapons, the AI advancements. Does it put us in a better position with China, or are they still our adversary and still our enemy?
Well, that remains to be seen. Certainly, it puts us in a better position. And let me just speak to the military threat. And you're right, absolutely, that is. in the last 45 days, dozens of high-ranking PLA generals have been sacked, cashiered, downgraded, including the two who are responsible for the Eastern Theater. Those are the two who would oversee any kind of Taiwan invasion, and they have been replaced by people who are not loyal, generals who are not completely loyal to Xi Jinping. And that is one of the biggest signs. That's happened many, many
So,
times. Xi
okay, so
Jinping is, Mhm.
let me be clear
Go
about
ahead.
this. The
Yeah,
generals that were sacked were Xi Jinping's lieutenants. They were his guys.
correct.
His
Correct.
guys are now out.
Absolutely
So
right.
what you're telling me is when this, and I don't know if he had a stroke, but there's a lot of evidence that that probably happened. Something, some medical
Yes,
condition that reduced his capacity about a year ago. So what you're telling
correct.
me is that the military at that time basically was able to extricate itself from the power structure of Xi's government, insulate itself as it often does, and then restructure the military in somebody's direction to be less pro Xi and more pro Yan Wang or whoever it turns out to be.
That's exactly what it appears to be. Let me tell you one other interesting thing, Steve. Xi Jinping's name and picture has not appeared in the People's Daily, which is, of course, the CCP organ, right? The daily, basically, it is the CCP newspaper. He hasn't appeared there for almost 2 weeks. And that's very unusual. So there's a
So
lot
no
of signs
picture,
pointing
no
this way.
article, nothing.
Other Chinese leaders are on the front page. I mean, sometimes you hear but it used to be just an ode to Xi Jinping. The whole thing was about his brilliance and
Right.
blah blah blah, and that's no longer true. Let me just
Man, I
mention,
like you,
Steve.
Gregory. You got the tea leaves. You got some good intel
Well,
here.
thank you, brother. Let me mention why that's important for us and why that's important for Ukraine. By the way, thank you for mentioning my book, Portraits of Ukraine, A Nation at War. It is an Amazon bestseller, and all profits go to really good pro-Ukrainian charities. So if your listeners are interested, I hope they'll check it out. Hopefully it'll be a blessing to them, and it'll certainly be a blessing to the charities who we're supporting. But without Xi Jinping, what Russia is going to be fighting this war on its own. And that's something it cannot do. So this would be a huge geopolitical boon for the United States and the West.
It doesn't seem that Russia can fight it with China's support or Iranian support. I mean, look, we all thought that war would be over in 2 weeks. I'm not a
Yes.
supporter of either side. I look. I don't think the charity should. I think charity. I'm all for. I don't think the
Yeah.
charity should come from the American taxpayer in the form of $100 billion, and I've not changed my position on that, and I'm not going to. So,
Okay.
Gregory, I appreciate you being here. You come back anything. You've got the best intel so far on
Yeah.
Xi, and
Thank
so
you,
I'm gonna
Steve.
I'm gonna mark this down June 5th and circle it because your predictions. If you're right, I'm bringing you back. I'm gonna say, man, you nailed it. Gregory, thank
Thank
you.
you, Steve. Okay. God bless. Thanks so much.
God bless you. There you have it. Latest and greatest. I'll be back. All right, from one side of the conversation, now let's get some other possible perspectives from Frank Gaffney. He is the president of the Institute for the American Future, president and CEO of Save the Persecuted Christians, and host of Securing America on Real America's Voice Network, and a contributor to this program for a number of years. Frank, nice to see you again.
It's great to be with you, Steve. Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about this. As I was just telling you, Gregory Slayton, the former ambassador to Bermuda through the George W. Bush and Barack Obama administrations, says that his tea leaves are telling him that there's been a great reshuffling of the power of the Chinese government, that Xi Jinping could soon see the door. Has not appeared in the People's Daily for 2 weeks now. Other politicians are on the cover. He said, most people wouldn't think that's a big deal. He said, in China, that's a big deal. And he said there are reformers coming. But as you pointed out, on many occasions, reformers, that doesn't mean friend to the United States, does it?
No, it doesn't. I caught a bit of the interview, and it was very interesting. Deng Xiaoping, I think, was man he was sort of holding up as an example of a guy
Right.
that was bringing great reform and wanted to do business with the United States. Deng Xiaoping was also the guy who brought us Tiananmen Square,
Yeah.
the anniversary of which we were marking this week, of course. He also brought us,
Which, by the way, for people that don't remember, 10,000 Chinese were slaughtered
yeah,
because they were
and
talking
that,
about freedom, right?
yeah, and that was just in the square. There may have been
Right.
50,000 across the country, but whatever the number is, it was a horror. And unfortunately, we sort of seized upon it. George H.W. Bush sent his national security advisor, Brent Scowcroft, off almost immediately thereafter and said, look, we're not going to let this interfere with our improving relations. We want you to, do business with us. In fact, uh, uh, bring your slave labor to bear so that we could profit from it. I think that Deng Xiaoping also should be remembered as the man who brought us famously a statement that was to the effect of the Cold War. This is 1992, I think. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union is over. The Soviets lost. A new Cold War has begun between the United States and China will win. And he began the process that's come to be known as unrestricted warfare against the United States. So yeah, he did business with us, including expropriating immense amounts of our industrial base. And I'd beware of reformers like him that might be in the offing. But Xi Jinping is a bad dude. Make no mistake about it. It'd be nice to see his departure. But I think we just have to be very chary about finding people who are all about putting a new blood into the Chinese Communist Party. The right answer here, as those folks in Tiananmen Square and across the country were seeking, was the end of the Chinese Communist Party. That's really what's in our vital interest, I believe.
Well, and in fact, Frank, you argue that there's an expanding Iron Curtain. I mean, look, I can see the infiltration. We've been talking about it all morning here. This whole incident out of Michigan with this pathogen, this fungus that would destroy corn, wheat, rice, and barley. And talking to farmers here on the program yesterday, they said if it was uncontrollable, it could easily wipe out 50% of their yields, half. And it wouldn't just be restricted to America because these things get airborne. It would be in Canada. It would be in Mexico, it would be in Argentina and all the big food producing nations. But the problem is it probably also end up in China or India unless they've already developed fungus resistant crops there and would be prepared for it. I mean, I don't know why so many roads lead back to the University of Michigan, but that's just one example of students there that are going up and taking pictures at Camp Grayling here last year, claiming, oh, we're journalists. Maybe that was 2023. This event now, look, all of these Chinese students that Donald Trump says we need to restrict, he's right, isn't he?
I think he's 100% right. We got to get him out of the country, truth be told. Just another interesting data point, Steve, on Deng Xiaoping. There was a defense minister of China who was caught with a transcript of remarks that he made about 20 years ago, in which he said Deng Xiaoping had actually directed the illegal, by the way, illegal biological warfare program of communist China to have as its mission depopulating the United States so that it could be colonized by China. not exactly a
Well,
moderate
that's
reformer.
China's plan for the world, though, Frank. I mean,
Well,
everything under
but
heaven, right? Isn't that the saying? Everything under heaven is Chinese. That's what they truly believe. We're just another province in waiting. Not just Taiwan, but every country, 190 countries on the planet, are just provinces in waiting. Are they not?
yeah. Well, you're so right. The world domination, the center of the universe, all of that, the Middle Kingdom is part and parcel of their strategy. But I think we have to take particular note of the idea of using biological warfare. Does this sound familiar? COVID
Yeah, yeah,
19. Now you're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about agro terrorism. I mean, these are
Fungus.
deliberate steps by a very hostile power that is at war with us. And that's going back to your question about a new Iron Curtain. I hope that it won't come to that, but I'm very concerned, I have to say, about this election that took place in South Korea a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
This is not a moderate. This is not a center leftist who's come to power. This is a
No, this is
guy
a far
deeply
left.
aligned with
Yeah,
the Chinese Communist Party and the North Korean regime, far left.
yeah.
And I fear
All
that
true.
his stated purpose is to get the American occupying army, as he puts it, out of South Korea, and
South
I think
Korea. Yeah.
unify the peninsula on pretty much the terms of the Chinese and the North Koreans. It would be a disaster for our security
That
interests
would create
in the South China.
another war, I believe, in Korea. We'll see what happens. Frank, I got to leave it there.
Pretty much.
Greatly
Thank you.
appreciate your input and your insight as always, my friend. We'll talk soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, but Frank Gaffney, everybody. Again, there's a couple of different perspectives on the world at large. It's a dangerous place. And the Chinese, they're playing to win. Are we? Are we playing to win? I think we are now with Donald Trump, but were we before? Boy, you have to wonder. I'll take a break. I'll have sports with Brock after this. check in on sports with my good friend Brock Palmbush.
With a look at sports, I'm Brock Palmbush. Leon Draisaitl scored at 19:29 of overtime, the victory over the Florida Panthers to take Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final last night in Edmonton. The Oilers rallied from a 3-1 deficit to tie before winning it in the extra session. Game 2 of the series tomorrow night in Edmonton. A full schedule in Major League Baseball yesterday. American League winners included Toronto, Detroit, and Cleveland. National League winners included Washington, Milwaukee, and San Francisco. At the Women's College Softball World Series in Oklahoma City, Texas scored twice in the 6th inning on Reese Atwood's RBI single, and they overcame 4 errors in the field to beat Texas Tech 2-1 to take Game 1 of the best-of-3 championship series. Game 2 of the series tonight in Oklahoma City. And the last of the quarterfinal matches were played yesterday at the French Open. Jannik Sinner, Novak Djokovic, and Coco Gauff all won. That's a look at sports. Back to you, Steve.
All right, Brock, thank you for that. Greatly appreciate you, my friend. This part of the program brought to you by my friends at 1775 Coffee. What's in my cup? Heck, I travel with it. 1775 Coffee. It is not weak. It is not mass-produced. It is grown in the Bolivian mountains, single origin, high altitude, hand-picked, roasted for bold, uncompromising flavor. There are no chemicals, no toxins. Look, folks, it's just damn good coffee. That's why we drink it here. I'm kind of a coffee snob, by the way. So's Ivy. Damn good coffee that fuels your day the right way. All you have to do to get your damn good coffee, go to 1775coffee.com/Gruber. Use the code Gruber for 10% off, and every dollar you spend is an entry to win a Tesla Cybertruck, $30,000 in cash. Wake up. Stand for something. Drink 1775 coffee. Now, when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation about all this CCP infiltration. Don't go anywhere. It's the Steve Gruber Show. You don't want to miss the next hour. I'll be right back.